got back from the ring banquet. How was everybody's first banquet in March? Yeah, I know. I got a ring. Very nice. You know, we got an honor ring, and it worked out really well. But, like, I don't know about you guys, but I've got this stigma with the month of March now because we put so much hype and pressure on it with the Honor Academy. And so I was originally going to speak about the 2 things that never fail, but that's been postponed until next week for 2 reasons. The first one being that I have to give another speech anyway, and the second reason being that I kept count, and we've had at least 5 relationship talks in the last month. And so I know that it can be, like, really overwhelming, and we can pretend that it's really worn out, but it's still relevant to the time that we're in right now. And so I thought that, as I'm thinking about this, it's something that we all think about, and so I figured it would be something that would be more more relevant to us as women of Castle Haas. So I don't know about you, but there's this picture that comes into my head when I think about the month of March. And I think about what would I do if a guy started to pursue me. And I know everyone has thought that question. And maybe if you've thought that question, you can also identify with that, like, butterflies in your stomach feeling. Not the, like, oh my goodness, I'm about to be romanced feeling, but the, like, queasy, I don't know what to do, like, what would I do if someone pursued me feeling. And just overall, if you, like, feel any way of the way that I do, you feel unprepared with the idea of pursuit. And so, in thinking about this, what can we do as emotional women who are prone to heartstring handouts to effectively keep our hearts guarded in the event that a good thing comes along? I don't have anybody in mind, so don't worry, and we know it'd be pretty easy to kind of shut down somebody that's not there, but what if there's, like, someone that's good, and, you know, possibly there's some potential for a relationship? How do we move forward in that process? I love the way that Mr. and Mrs. Bushnell put it during the relationship talks about evaluation versus involvement. Evaluation is just kind of getting to know someone and catching all of the red flags during, like, the friendship stage, and it keeps things really, really easy. And the involvement stage is where you make a conscious choice, like, I will pursue you, like, you are long-term material that I'm going after, or, like, waiting to be gone after by, more like. But, yeah, so with that in mind, just what we're going after, the evaluation versus involvement stage, I thought I had a pretty good handle on it after the, 5 talks we've had. But then Mrs. Bushnell said some things that really changed my thought process on this. She said that the evaluation stage should be 3 times longer than the involvement stage. And so I kind of shrunk back, and, like, my confidence in this process had sort of dwindled down a little bit, because we think that we all know how it should work after all this time. But when I was really thinking about that, am I really going to be able to keep my heart uninvolved for 3 times as long as it's going to be involved before I've emerged? And I think most of us can say that the answer is no. So what do we do as godly women to help us stay in the evaluation stage and not get involved emotionally before it's time? Well, I've got 2 ways that can keep your heart evaluating but emotionally uninvolved. The first way to keep your heart well guarded in friendships with the opposite gender is to stop thinking ahead. Ladies, we are naturally bad at this. I love the way that Heather Paulson puts it in Emotional Purity when she talks about how a woman can go out to dinner and can go out to coffee with a guy and be naming the children they'll have with him by the end of the night. I think we can all identify with testing out his last name with your first name, or, like, trying different things like that. I know. We all can identify that this is relevant stuff, but one thing that we don't think about when we think about this is not only is this the tendency to think ahead, is the reel that we cast our heartstrings from. It's emotional adultery on our husbands. And so if we as women can learn how to stop thinking ahead and live in the now with our relationship with the opposite gender, not only will we be guarding our hearts effectively because we're not committing emotional adultery, but our relationships with the opposite gender are going to have so much more freedom because there's not going to be any expectations. You're not going to be waiting for Prince Charming to come along because he has a good last name that fits with the, like, perfect name you have for your children one day. See, I know, I got a good one right there. So, ladies, like, the first step, stop thinking ahead. If you can choose to, like, pause your mind and live in the now, you'll find your friendships much more fulfilling. The second tip to keeping your heart effectively guarded while not thinking ahead is to learn to separate the qualities that you are attracted to from the guys themselves. A lot of times as women, we can meet guys that have 3 or 4, really popping out qualities and be attracted to that, and we sort of stick the qualities with the guy. And that is so unhealthy. I don't know if you remember last year when Mrs. Luce was talking about how we should all make a list of things that we want in our husband. And So a lot of times we like make our list, and there's 2 or 3 things in our list that we see in this guy, so we're attracted to the guy. I can say that it should work the other way around. For me, learning to identify qualities in a guy helps you put together your list much better. I can say that my list has quadrupled and from the relationships that I have in my life. And I have really healthy relationships with members of the opposite gender because I've learned to separate and enjoy their qualities without getting attached to like the person themselves. And so in my head I have this wonderful guy, and it works really well to like take bits and pieces of people and create this like man. And one day, ladies, there is going to be a guy who will come for you, who is overwhelming with all of these wonderful qualities, but let the Lord be the one to lift the veil. Don't seek your suitor. Continue to choose to be blind and only see the qualities until God comes and lifts the veil from your face, because he will when it's the right time. And so if we as women can effectively learn to stop thinking ahead, stop naming someone else's children, and committing adultery in our minds and our hearts, and if we can learn to continue to separate the qualities that we're attracted to in men from the actual character of the men themselves, we'll find removed expectations from the Prince Charming who is never meant to be ours, and we'll also find fulfillment in our hearts effectively guarded.